with
we have
Wi-Fi
to?
didn't like. Yes, we need to get started. All right, I am going to call the regular session of SEDA to order with roll call, please.
Board Member Van Gordon.
Here.
Board Member Pitts.
Here.
Board Member Moe.
Here.
Board Member Rodley.
Here.
Board Member Stair.
Here.
Chair Woodrow.
Here.
Board Member Pictionary.
Here.
And Board Member Burney.
Here.
Okay, and I will read this. The instructions as we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us by phone or online to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. There is one time designated for public testimony this evening and will be listed as business from the audience. If you are joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak during that time, please use the raise hand feature. When you are called upon, please state your name, ward, or general location and the subject you would like to speak about. The order of public testimony is as follows. Anyone who has raised their virtual hand, anyone who has submitted email in advance. If there's remaining time, you will read the emails into the record. First item.
First item, Chair Woodrow, is under communications. It is business from the audience. Just for your knowledge, we have 59 attendees. We currently have one hand raised. And that hand is Mike Eister. And Mike, if you'll unmute your microphone, we're ready for you.
Can you hear me, Neil?
We can hear you.
Okay. I just want to say that I share your excitement about the development options in Glenwood. I'd like to commend the council and economic development staff for consolidating and assembling this property to make development more feasible. I also want to thank the counselors and economic development staff who worked closely with the people who are proposing these various developments that you'll be considering tonight and next week or in the next weeks. I just can't say enough. This is so exciting and thrilling. So great work, everybody.
Thank you. Neil, is that all?
Chair Woodrow, it appears that is our only speaker.
Okay, next item, please.
Any business from staff?
Yes, I would like to bring forward to this evening a little bit of an update related to a communication packet item that we shared at the end of last week. Just for a brief update and any board discussion. The item is specific to the Masaka Properties LLC development. The packet was sent to the board and made public on Friday. For reference, last year, David Lovell of Masaka Properties LLC approached the Springfield Utility Board and SEDA with interest in redeveloping the sub-owned property, which is located on Main. It's identified in that packet. Sub indicated their willingness to participate through a partnership with SEDA, but only if SEDA bought the properties from Sub to subsequently work with Masaka. Over the last year, Masaka has explored a couple different concepts, shifting from some hotel and hospitality to residential. And in January, they approached the board with a request for funds to complete initial feasibility work on the project. Additionally, one of the existing longstanding businesses located in a portion of the building not needed for redevelopment also approached the board requesting the ability to purchase their building. During that meeting, Sub did grant funds to Masaka LLC to complete their preliminary feasibility work and did authorize staff to move forward with acquisition of the property, specifically not contingent on the outcomes of any of the Masaka assessment work or ability to move forward with the redevelopment. Right after that meeting the following week, staff did work with Masaka LLC and they indicated that they were reconsidering moving forward with the project and the use of the grant funds. We have held on completing the purchase for the last month and a half to give them time to consider. But we are planning to continue moving forward at this point. That was the board's authorization and direction to us. We did loop back around and provide that communication just as a touch point, an extra touch point for the board in case there was any questions. So if there's no questions, just thought we'd recap it, but be available if there's any direction or anything you might need from us.
Good.
Joe, B,
First of all, thank you, Courtney, and could you probably can in one sentence, just remind me, because I forgot, that's all. The SEDA, why it's in our interest to purchase, given that the original intent isn't there, and yet at the same time, I'm also aware that's kind of what we do, but I just wanted to kind of understand that if you don't.
Yeah, we would still see it as an opportunity site. It is a place currently that has a portion which is a bare parking lot. That always provides an opportunity for us to partner either with the current developer or a future developer to see new increment, new taxable value placed on the property. It is currently under sub-ownership now. It is another public agency, but not one that is positioned to negotiate for redevelopment, whereas SEDA really is in that role, like you say.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Courtney.
thank you, Joe. Any other questions? Okay. Next item, please.
Chair, your next item is new business. We have one item under new business, Glenwood Riverfront Development. Courtney Griesel is still here for the staff report.
I am still here. So for reference on this site, I'm actually going to pull up a PowerPoint just to give you a site vicinity map. I'm happy to share this publicly with our city recorder as well. This is really just an image pulled off of Google, but I'm realizing that we didn't provide a vicinity map in the packet, and that would be beneficial. So pardon me while I share my screen. So this is nothing fancy, but I know you'll forgive me. So generally you're seeing Springfield here on the right, I-5 delineating north and south, Glenwood down here on the south end of the site. The star is indicating where this site is in approximation to both our downtown, but also Franklin Boulevard towards the university and downtown Eugene. This is a zoomed in look at the site itself as assembled today by SEDA. We're nearing about 9 acres. Not all is developable because it does sit on the river, which includes some setbacks. And this is the site that we are discussing specifically this evening. I'll also note that there are opportunity lands on either side here and on this side with adjacent property owners who have been very active with SEDA really for the last 20 years, looking at redevelopment opportunities. I'm going to pull this down so you can see one another. So for this evening, we want to provide a brief recap of some of the history of how we have come to this place. Early in the renewal district's formation, land assembly and redevelopment in Glenwood was one of the top priorities, creating access to the river, placing housing, industry, and really modes of transportation, rapid transit, bike, things to just make that space more accessible and really utilize that river frontage. For this evening, I will note that my plan is to avoid providing any summary or an attempt at a summary or overview of any of the interested groups. I just kind of want to stick to what we can do moving forward. We had originally looked at putting out a request for qualifications on the site. This would be a competitive process where we would take several months to prepare work. We would advertise the site. We would work with a wide range of developers to solicit interest, and then ultimately review proposals and make a selection. Those processes can take 6 months or more. As we began that process in early 2019, only months in, we actually started to understand potential momentum around an indoor track. And so the board elected at that time to pause the RFQ process and give space for the indoor track vision and the possibility of that locating on the site. A little over 6 months ago, the board determined that this was maybe not the best site for that project, although the project remains a priority. So we have not restarted the request for qualifications process. But in the interim, we have been approached by multiple groups with interest in redeveloping the sites. All groups have expressed that there is a time pressure. One group in particular, a very fast time pressure. A lot of this is related to access to capital, specifically opportunity funds and the timelines associated with those. We did a little bit of work in the last couple months to understand the legal process for which the board could negotiate with a preferred group. And what we've determined is that SEDA can move forward to choose a developer and exclusively negotiate the sale and redevelopment of SEDA land without an RFQ. You do have that opportunity. It will mean that as we negotiate, we will have to incorporate some complicated and important legal bidding processes into the negotiations, which is something that doesn't remove our ability, though, to select the developer exclusively. Because multiple groups have expressed interest, and they do seem to be at similar stages of concept development, we felt it was important that those groups provide you some information for consideration, and that if you'd like to direct staff to schedule time for their presentations, you have the ability to direct all three groups that we're aware of at this time. So the request for the board at this time is, would you like to invite the current groups who have attached information in this packet to present their concepts? We tentatively have scheduling in mid-April for this to occur. We would quickly after this evening turn around communication with them to give them some guidance about what they might plan to present and the information we'd ask that they provide. And so that really is the next question for the board. If you would like to direct this for us to schedule it this evening, we'd ask that you talk through the final attachment of this packet to clarify, reiterate, expand on the items you'd like us to make sure that we ask the groups to present on and provide information on. I will pull up that attachment and we can talk through it, but I do want to pause for a moment and answer any questions before I throw you into an attachment on the screen.
Leonard,
Thanks, Marilee. Courtney, thanks for the update. So is when we diverted our focus to the indoor track project, were multiple contractors considered for that project?
The indoor track project hadn't really gotten to a phase of development where they were looking at multiple contractors. The project's also owned by an independent party, not us. So I don't want to speak for their process of how they would move forward with it. It is such a unique facility that I don't know that there would have been multiple groups considering an indoor track. They were the only one to approach us.
But there was only one independent party that approached the city about it.
About an indoor track?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing that I wanted to just check in about the parties that were going to be allowing to make presentations in lieu of the RFQ, just to protect the city from a possible conflict of interest. Is there going to be an open call to the public to submit their presentations as well?
There would not. And this is the request for qualifications is considered the open call. This is a request to the board. We could do that open call, a request for qualifications, but we would not meet the timelines of at least one of these groups. And so this is our response for an alternative that would give a potential chance to meet the timeline of the interested parties at stake now. Should none of them work, we could then pivot back to a request for qualifications, a more formal public process after.
Okay, how many groups are going to be presenting to us?
Right now, we're aware of 3 groups. If the board is aware of others that seem to be in similar phases, definitely let us know, and we'd be happy to invite, but this is very quick. And so we would not expect a group who has not been anticipating or exploring this for a year or more to be ready in 3 weeks.
Got it. Thank
And
you.
those are the ones that are listed in the packet. Is that correct? Courtney?
Correct. Those are the 3 attachments that you have. Any other questions, or I can jump into our question around information and criteria.
Sean?
We can't hear you. Sorry, Mayor.
I got a cool microphone that apparently has 2 mute buttons.
Yeah, in every meeting, it has to be said once.
Yep. So when we think about, we could get to the end of this process and select nobody, right? There's not a requirement that we would select one of those 3.
Correct.
And considering that it would not be a formal RFQ process, and maybe if you're gonna get to this when you talk through that attachment, are we scoring these categories, or are we just sort of arbitrarily talking about what we like about those categories? How does that, is it just sort of open for us to evaluate?
So typically in an RFQ process, you would be scoring. The scoring would be based on quite a bit of work leading up to that about your
Okay.
vision and the weight of the vision. We haven't done that work, but we could, between now and then, come back with some proposed scoring weights that we have seen in similar communities. You would not have to use that mechanism, though.
Okay, thank you.
Joe B?
Courtney, am I correct in that you also requested if we had any questions to consider asking or looking at?
Yeah, any additions or priorities or questions, of course.
Okay. I feel that since 2019, there's a time value of money, so I'm delighted that we're going to move forward, although I would hesitate to call it quickly. But from this point, it's quickly. So I would be interested, and other people could tell me if they agree, but I would be interested in knowing if funds are actually reserved, if there's a proof of funds or a commitment to fund. Right now, I would be interested to know if it's going to be if they are proposing financing, and if so, is it one source or multiple, like a capital stack? And if it's a capital stack, what the terms and conditions of each finance are, because that's kind of mezzanine financing, versus is it equity? Is it possible that one of these groups has equity financing, so it's an investment and there would be no debt attached to the project, because that could impact things. I would also like to know, of all 3 proposals, how many units of low income or working family housing are they committing to? And if they're committing to it and it's private money, how are they subsidizing that to get it down to low income or working family rates? I'd be very interested in knowing the general contractor for each of these 3 proposals, what specific buildings they've built in our community before, in sort of the metro area. All of those to me really speak to how fast a group really can move and the credentials with which they could move locally. So anyway, I was reading the materials you submitted, and if those are appropriate questions, those would be some key ones for me.
Perfect. Yeah, I think you're elaborating on some of the bullets we have there in the attachment. So it's good to know we're thinking aligned to your thinking on it. The mix of housing is something we can add and focus on. I will flag that all of these projects are really even pre-concept. So concept is even a technical pre-development term, and all groups have indicated it's pre that. So they may not yet have all this detail, but we can ask for as much as they do, and that'll be a great indication.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do you want to look at the last attachment, or do we feel like, I want to be mindful of your evening, there's quite a bit.
If you could pull it up and just show them what it is you're referring to.
Sure. So in the final 2 pages of the document, we have identified some proposed submission information on page 1. So this would be information we would ask each of the groups to consider and, to the best of their ability, provide back to the board both in a packet, but also touch on in the presentation. And so obviously we'd be looking to understand their vision and concept, what is the story, but also what's your knowledge and understanding of your plan for phasing? How would this phase out? What is the timeline associated with that? What is your sense on how it's rooted in market and financial feasibility? The costs anticipated, we know this is going to be very high level because these are early concepts and costs per square foot are quite intense, but it does play into tax valuation and tax exempt statuses and things we will care about. To board member Bernie's points, funding. So we are identifying things like equity versus debt, types of funding, the stack, the project phases for which funding is currently secured. We are asking them to identify any known subsidies or anticipated financial or service partnerships with SEDA or any public entity. So these would be important for us to understand clearly what the ask for partnerships would be. The expectation is there is asked for partnership. It is really why the Urban Renewal Agency exists. But it would be good to know what types and to what scale that they can tell now. Wanting to know who they are as an owner, developer, kind of equity organization, an LLC, who would we actually be negotiating with? And then moving into experience. So what is their experience actually constructing projects of this magnitude or type, or negotiating deals of this type? We're recommending some questions about their engagement with adjacent property owners, just to understand, does the phasing incorporate more than just our site? Is it dependent on more than just our site? Those are some of the high level pieces. The point about a mix of housing is something we might wrap in more obviously into their vision and concept to ask that question if the board would like. And then we've identified some ways to think about criteria. This gets to the mayor's question about, how would we go about scoring this? We are open to understanding your preference and providing as much information or kind of best practice as possible. These criteria are based on sort of best practice that we see in other communities who are embarking on projects like this. And we would be open to other priorities.
I can't see anybody, so if anybody has any questions, I can speak up. There you go.
Courtney, is there anything in there that relates to whether the project as it's being proposed is consistent with the existing Glenwood refinement plan?
Yeah, we do have that in there, especially as it relates to vision and concept and then plan and phasing. So really it is a complicated land use process. We might emphasize that even further along with the housing mix.
So what you were looking for tonight is a request or to go forward and have a presentation. If I had it down, what, the 15th of April, is it?
Yes, so presentation would be April 12th.
April
would be
12th,
the direction. Right now, we are looking, we could do about 30 minutes per group with presentation, a little time for question and answer. We've also reserved some time on the board's agenda for April 26th to have a follow-up discussion. We can work to be flexible, as flexible as possible in between if you'd like additional information. If after they present, you have questions that we want them to follow up on, our goal will be to move as quickly as possible and try and get you those responses so you can discuss and direct, and we can give it a best shot to meet the timelines.
Okay. Any questions or
I
Sean?
I'm comfortable with the timeline. I'm really excited to have these conversations, and I'm glad that we're sort of taking on doing the work so that we can meet. Like, there's some pretty sensitive timelines in here, so I'm glad we're going to get it done. My only request going into that conversation, I think we have all the questions, to at least start the conversation. Is there room for you to do probably a little bit of technical analysis, looking at the, and give some technical opinions about what the proposals have?
Yeah, and I was thinking through this as well, just over the weekend. The moving between the April 12th presentation and the materials coming to the board slightly before that, and us preparing for April 26th, we could do our best to do a little technical analysis in between. And then we may be able to have a discussion with the board about some of that really preliminary feedback. What we know is that by April 26th, if the board is not comfortable and would like more information and more analysis, then we can do our best to make time to do that as expeditiously as possible thereafter. I think it's important to go as fast as possible, but not so fast that we don't ask important questions.
Yeah, so I'm hearing the 26th as being more like a toll gate, right? See where everybody's comfort level is, and then decide where we go from there.
Yeah, my goal is to give you a chance to direct us at every step if you all feel confident or kind of energized to do it. And if not, we'll just keep the discussion going until you are.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the schedule looks great. I'm looking forward to the conversations the 12th. These are great, just great projects.
Steve?
I've been pushing for economic development in Glenwood for so long, and I'm glad to finally see us getting serious and moving along. So thank you very much.
What Sean
Courtney,
and
do you have
Steve
what you
said.
need?
I have what I
Pardon?
need.
I was just saying what Sean and Steve said. Looks great. Move forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Later.
Great. Thank you. We have what we need. Appreciate it.
All righty. I think that was all, wasn't it, Neil?
Yes, that is your full agenda.
All righty, then I will adjourn our meeting and thank everybody for their patience and extended time of the meeting.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.